All right, y'all, another week, another topic. Let's get some more notes in. Roll that intro. All right, guys, welcome back. We got another week's worth of notes. All right, this week you're going to be doing the light gray boxes of your notes. All right, now I'm going to try to keep this one pretty quick because it's a pretty easy topic. You're just kind of going to talk about if we're using capital or lowercase letters, and that's pretty much all for this week. All right, so I do got a couple slides. It's going to be a lot of text. I'm sorry, not a whole awful lot of pictures, but I'm going to try my best to kind of explain it. All right, so like I'm telling all my students, please do me a favor, just watch it all the way through just once. All right, and then at the very end, I'll review all the slides. That way you can kind of copy down your notes. All right, now dominant and recessive. Most traits are going to be controlled by one gene with two alleles. Now, there are three possible combinations of a gene that organisms can have because the organism has two alleles for every gene. Remember, that allele is just different types, all right, different combinations for the genes. All right, now every organism can have, and here are the three different combinations. All right, you can have two dominant alleles, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in a bit. Two recessive alleles, again, we'll talk about that in a little bit. Or it can have one dominant and one recessive. So real quick, take a look at that picture down here in the corner, the inheritance of eye color. All right, the mother and the father both have one dominant, which is going to be that capital B, and one recessive, that lowercase b. Now, if you look down below them, you're going to see that there are four offspring, four children. The first one on the very left is capital B, capital B. That's going to be an example of your two dominant alleles. The two in the middle are kind of both like the mother and the father. They have one capital, so one dominant, and one lowercase, one recessive. And then the very last one on the right is actually going to be blue eyes because it is both lowercase b's, both recessive alleles. Now, when you have two recessive alleles, that's when you get that recessive trait, right? The one that you don't see as often. Let me talk about the letters real quick. All right, now we symbolize the dominant allele for a gene with a capital letter, right? You see how caps, right? I'm yelling at you. You got that capital letter, right? And it's normally the letter of the trait that's being shown here. All right, and so like that previous picture had brown eyes, so it used a capital B. Just so happens that blue also starts with a little b, but you generally use the letter of the trait that you're talking about. So you know what? If I wanted to talk about hitchhiker's thumb, right? Maybe I put an H, maybe I put a T for thumb. Normally it kind of, the letter you pick, you try to make it make sense. Right. Now we also symbolize the recessive allele for a gene with a lowercase version of that same letter. Right. So we're going to use the same letter that we used before. If you look over here on my right, the example is a T, right? We used a capital T for the dominant letter. For recessive, we're going to use a lowercase t. Now, the example down there at the bottom, right? Pea plant height is controlled by one gene, right? There's one gene that determines if it's a tall plant or a short plant. That's the only two options here. Now, tall is going to be the dominant allele, all right? So if you were to go out to, farm and see a whole bunch of different pea plants, more than likely you're going to see a bunch of tall pea plants. It's dominant. You're more likely to see it. All right, and short is the recessive allele. Right, and so we're gonna symbolize that with capital T is tall and little t is short. Now, if an organism has two of the same kind of gene, we actually do have a name for this. If it is capital or little, all right, it's called a purebred, or what we will normally say is it's homozygous. Now, I know that's kind of a big word, all right. The prefix, let's talk about that for a second. The prefix, the beginning of the word homo, that means same, all right? Now, it means that it has the same genes, all right? Capital T, or little t. So an organism that has two dominant alleles is said to be homozygous dominant, all right? So we're going to use that first word, homozygous, meaning the same, and dominant, saying that we're talking about the dominant letter here. All right, that organism is going to express whatever that dominant trait is. Now, for pea plants, like we were talking about, the dominant trait is being tall. So if it's homozygous, same, dominant, that means it's going to have two tall genes. All right, now the opposite of that, if an organism is recessive, all right, it can still be homozygous, it can still be the same, but it's the recessive. That's how we're going to see these short plants, all right? If it is homozygous recessive, we're going to see, right? Again, homozygous means same. recessive, that's just going to be the recessive trait, the lowercase trait. All right. And real quick, let's look at those two examples. It says homozygous tall pea plant. Homozygous means same. Tall is that dominant, is the capital T. So that's why it's going to be capital T, capital T. And then the other example, homozygous short pea plant. Homozygous means same. Short pea plant is that little t. So little t, right? What I want you guys to take away, the main thing I want you to take away from this slide is that the word homozygous means that it is the same. All right. And again, that prefix homo, that kind of makes sense. All right. It makes sense. It is the same. Now, an organism with two different alleles for that trait is called heterozygous or hybrid. We're going to normally call it heterozygous. All right. In this case, the dominant allele still appears. All right. You do still see that capital T tall trait, and the recessive allele is hidden. All right. Now, a great example of this, guys, this is like, all right, if you got two people saying the word. All right. If you have me, and I'm over here and I'm going to be the dominant trait and I'm saying tall, right? It's just like me screaming it, right? If it's in all caps, right? Someone sends you a text in all caps, it's like they're yelling at you, all right? So if I'm the capital T, that's like me screaming tall, the top of my lungs, right? And if you're the little t, right? It's like you whispering short, all right? If you whisper short at the same time that I scream tall, who are you going to hear, right? Everyone's going to hear tall. So you're going to see that dominant trait. The recessive trait's still there, but it's just kind of hidden. All right. And that's going to, so look over here on this picture, right? This is going to be a heterozygous tall pea plant. Heterozygous meaning the two letters are different. Now, not that they're different letters, they're both T, but they're different cases. One's capital, one's lowercase. Okay. And so you see that plant, it's still tall, but it's a heterozygous tall pea plant. Hetero, meaning different, tall. All right. Now, organisms can have, all right, that are homozygous dominant and heterozygous have different genotypes, but you still see that same phenotype. All right. And this is because this is the dominant trait taking over. As long as there is one capital letter, right? As long as one of us, either you or me, as long as one of us is yelling the word tall, it's going to be a tall plant, right? If I yell tall and you whisper short, you're going to hear me. It's going to be tall. If I yell tall and you yell tall, well, we're both yelling the same thing. You're going to hear the word tall, right? So these organisms can have different allele combinations, but look the same. Now, example here, this homozygous tall pea plant is capital T, capital T. And right next to it, looking exactly the same, is a heterozygous tall pea plant, capital T, little t. They have two different genotypes, right? The genes inside of them are different, but they do have the same phenotype, that physical trait. What we see is still the same. Guys, that's going to be it for this. I know that was kind of quick. Let me give you my quick takeaways here. All right. If it is a capital letter, it is dominant. If it's a lowercase letter, it's recessive. All right. Homozygous means the same. Heterozygous means different. All right. And even though they look the same, they could still be different. All right. Now, I'm going to go ahead, like I said, I'm going to go back to the beginning, give you a couple quick seconds to stop on each slide, hit pause, and copy the notes. All right, guys, you did it. I'm going to go ahead and roll that outro. All right, y'all, that's it for today. Don't forget to subscribe, go to the playlist to check out any other videos that you may have missed, and send us a message on Schoology if you need.